Good morning, everybody. Just a sound check. Great seeing everybody joining. We obviously busy admitting colleagues into the session, so we'll be with you in a few minutes' time.
Maybe log out.
Morning, Harry. Just checking if you can hear me. My computer's showing I'm on aeroplane mode. I just want to check that everything's all right on your side.
Can hear you. Thank you, Nikki.
Perfect.
Well, good morning, everybody. I think we can start. We've been looking forward to this session for quite some time. And as we go along, we're going to add more people into the session. And I see there are already people on YouTube as well. So welcome, everybody. I think that's such an important topic we're talking about today. And while we're still admitting people, let's do a little bit of housekeeping quickly. Remember to please keep yourselves on mute. We'll give opportunity that you can unmute yourselves and ask questions and so on during the questions and answers session at the end of the session. You're also most welcome to make use of the chat room at the bottom to greet each other, share comments, and you can also there post questions for the panelists. And during the panel discussion, we will address those questions. And then important to realize that we're doing this in a meeting fashion. It's not a webinar fashion. In other words, everybody is allowed to unmute yourself during the session. When recognized, then you can talk. But as I said, we'll try and keep that for the panel discussion. All right, so ladies and gents, let's have a look at our program for the day. And I'm going to just put up our program here. So today we're proudly being hosted by Global Trade Solution. Thank you very much, Louise Widget, for putting this together, Chief Executive Officer of Global Trade Solution. And she will obviously tell you a little bit more about this great company when she's going to talk. Now, all right, so we're talking about, and this is a dialogue on gender diversity and inclusiveness in this transport, logistics, and supply chain industry, 15th of June, 2023. And ladies and gents, you might have noticed that this session, obviously, as all Transport Forum events, are complimentary for everybody to attend, as well as the, all the related content on the web. So obviously we'll have, valued partners, associates, and sponsors that's making the Transport Forum possible. And we would like to quickly give recognition to all these organizations. Just a recap on the program. This is more or less how we're going to do it today, the sequence. First, we will have Louise Widget doing the opening address for us. Then we'll have Yulisa Kani, then Nikki Scott, then Ray of the Year, and then Marcelo Nslabro. So that is the way we're going to do it. But back to our sponsors, and before we start, good news is that we're going to dish out 3 prizes today for anybody to win who's answering questions correctly. In other words, this is a little bit fun. We're going to tell you about our associates and our sponsors, and after that, we're going to ask questions. So depending how well you listened, if you're the first one in the chat room answering the question right, then you will be the winner of that prize. So the first prize will be sponsored. It is sponsored by Global Trade Solution, a host, and it will be depending on whether it's male or female winning the prize. If it's female, then it will be a very nice spa voucher that will be sent to you. If it's a male person, yeah, then it's a nice dinner for 2 sponsored by Global Trade Solution. So that's the first prize. And then the other 2 prizes are the very usable Magneto rechargeable LED contacts with load shedding and so on. It's a very handy device to have. So you might be the lucky one of those 2 as well. So let's then have a look at our sponsors and listen carefully, and you might be the winner answering the question correctly. So the Transport Forum's got valued associates, professional bodies in the industry that's in a formal relationship with the Transport Forum. Obviously, there are many others also being in a relationship with us, but these are in a formal agreement, and we're quickly going to have a look at them. So the first one there is South African Association of Freight Forwarders, been established in 1921, and it's a national association with members throughout South Africa. You can see they say they make a major contribution to facilitating trade with South Africa. Member companies manage over 80% of South Africa's international trade. So thank you very much, SAF, for your support. Then we have the South African Express Parcel Association. So it is a representative body of the voice of the express delivery industry in South Africa, all about express logistics. Thank you very much, SAPA. We've got the Road Freight Association. Their slogan is "Without trucks, South Africa stops." And you can see they talk about green, smart, safe, legal, and freight. So if you're not being represented by the road freight industry yet, they definitely need to become a member of the Road Freight Association. We've got the African Rail Industry Association. See, it's the preeminent body in South Africa representing players in the railway industry. Their vision is to have a world-class rail infrastructure across South Africa, so much needed. And this is important. Our mission is to advocate for the rail industry and third-party access to the country's railway network. Thank you very much, Aria, for your support. We've got the South African Bus Operators Association as the voice of the bus and the coach industry. All right, so they play a vital role in social and economic development of a country, because public transport, if they can't travel, then they can't get to work. So they were formed in 1980 by 5 leading bus companies at the time. Today, SAPOA represents about 70% of the public transport bus and coach fleet. Thank you very much, SAPOA. We've also got formal arrangements with media houses, and you can see your Freight News, Railways Africa, and Engineering News. All right, so let's have a look at Freight News. And as we usually say, everybody from these organizations are welcome to interrupt me should you want to say a few words yourself about the organization. So Freight News is just news and features for import-export decision makers. And it's Freight News by Freight and Trading Weekly. All about logistics news. If you're not subscribed, then you're missing out. So Railways Africa magazines, the African Continental Specialist Trade Technical Business-to-Business online publication, covering all aspects of the rail sector. All right. Engineering News of Creamer Media. So it's real economy news, real time. So they're the premier source of real economy news and daily coverage of South Africa's transport and automotive sectors, accurate and timely news reportage. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to check if I've shared my sound here. I'm not too sure, just bear with me. All right, there we go. So I want to play you last week's wrap that they usually sent us. Thank you, Engineering News.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 9 June 2023. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly senior writer Simone Litka writes that the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFCFTA, holds promise for South African exports, but implementation roadblocks remain. While the AFCFTA agreement presents a significant opportunity to access a larger market for South Africa's exports and the local manufacturing sector, the need for extensive work in terms of implementation has been highlighted. The Engineering News features focus on cement and concrete, where infrastructure projects are critical to the sector's growth. Boilers and burners, where a partnership with a German supplier is bearing fruit. And corrosion control, coatings and tribology, where a company expands its industrial solutions through 2 partnerships. The Mining Weekly features focus on a preview of the London Indaba, where the debut of the London Indaba aims to highlight the potential for African mining. And Mining in Mozambique, where opportunities are unlocked through addressing regional issues. This week's business leader is Jan Widerstrom, President and MD of Saab. And as this week's cartoon shows, South Africans are known to use humor as a coping mechanism against many of the difficulties they face, but citizens have become decidedly humorless as daily power cuts affect their lives. We hope you enjoy this edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly. Be sure to subscribe to the magazine that offers you in-depth news about developments in the real economy by emailing subscriptions@engineeringnews.co.za. Happy reading and see you next time.
Well, thank you, Engineering News. Ladies and gents, we're now going to have a look at our gold sponsors, sponsors of the Transport Forum. Our host today is Global Trade Solution, and Louise Widget will tell you more about this company just now. But, for the moment, they're talking about innovative solutions, transforming global supply chain. And you can see they've got a consulting strategy, they've got software solutions and specialized services. So thank you, Louise Widget and your team, Global Trade Solution, for your gold sponsorship for many years already. We really appreciate it, and your hosting today. Ladies and gents, we've got the platinum sponsor for this transport forum, which is C-Track. They've been part of us actually since inception. You can see they are leading global software as a service and big data company for vehicle tracking, fleet management, and insurance telematics solutions. Thank you very much, C-Track, for your platinum sponsorship.
Time management, fleet productivity, and driver management remain among the most critical priorities for fleet managers, business owners, or anyone managing a fleet of vehicles. C-Track has innovated further by introducing enhancements to Crystal, the advanced telematics and fleet management platform, delivering an always-on, scalable, flexible, and fully customizable experience. All the benefits and features of Crystal remain, with driver management and fleet productivity enhancements, enabling your business, big or small, to elevate business insight with quality data and AI-powered predictions for immediate and productive decision-making. Users can now ensure optimum fleet utilization with daily productivity reports displayed on the Crystal dashboard for easy access. Driver jobs can be scheduled with ideal routes based on traffic data, complete with indicated and mandatory fuel stops based on preferred locations. Delivery locations and addresses can be accessed from the pre-populated drop-down list, further enriching ease of use. Drivers access these assigned jobs from the Crystal application on virtually any smartphone or tablet from anywhere in the world, giving them specific duties, precise locations, optimal routes with real-time traffic updates, and even assigned delivery times, updated in real time based on the predefined routes provided, reducing unproductive idle time. Another exciting addition is that Crystal now features customizable electronic proof of delivery with sign-on glass and photo evidence technology, ensuring safe and digital proof of delivery. Crystal, powered by C-Track, provides enhanced productivity and time management. Get Crystal and have the power to predict.
Thank you very much, C-Track. And a great product, Crystal. You need to be covered by them, surely. Ladies and gents, we've got a university, also part of the Transform since inception, University of Johannesburg, Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management. They've also got the Institute for Transport and Logistics Study, also very much involved, a lot of mentoring to myself, Prof. Jackie, Prof. Naleen, Prof. Rose, all of them. Thank you very much for all your support. We really appreciate it. Pegasus, changing lives, changing worlds. In South Africa, we leverage our sector-leading expertise and experience to craft and implement mobility solutions which work and have substantial impact. So you can see they are a multidisciplinary strategic management consulting group, and they focus on cities, climate, energy, resilience, transport, waste, and water. Thank you very much, Pegasus, for your gold sponsorship. Unitron Supply Chain Solutions, also a gold sponsor. Innovation expertise delivered. So they're the leading provider of integrated transportation, warehousing, and supply chain-based services to customers with a variety of needs, offering bespoke value propositions in each segment. JC Auditors, certification, compliance, one solution. They're a SANAS accredited certification body providing internationally recognized certifications. Thank you very much, JC Auditors, for your support. But Air Cargo. But Air Cargo fulfills the needs of the express cargo industry for daytime and overnight cargo capacity across a comprehensive Southern and East Africa footprint. So they're leading cargo airline, providing express airport-to-airport solutions and the related services to the courier and express logistics industry. Thank you, but Air Cargo. Right, we've got Simutech. Simutech, they serve sectors such as safe city, parking management, supply chain mobility, public safety. You can see, so they offer smart supply, smart parking, smart security, smart kiosks, and hardware solutions. Thank you very much, Asimotech, for your gold sponsorship. EasyClear, the leading software provider for the customs and clearing industry. They say they've got software solutions for customs clearing, freight forwarding, and logistic providers covering air, sea, road, and rail. Thank you very much, EasyClear, for your gold sponsorship. Right, another great company is the Ticket Pro Group. Ticket Pro Travel is the online booking tool. You can see it's an online corporate travel booking tool with everything you need and nothing you don't want. So there's no hidden fees, just good business with straightforward, fair pricing. So it included a travel protector, business guardian, and cutting-edge innovation with this corporate online booking tool. Thank you very much, Ticket Pro Travel. And from the same group, we've got the Ticket Pro Smart Tab solution. So this solution includes key features like comprehensive route management, flexible passenger payment methods, flexible route and fare product setup, shift and dispatch management, cashier system, inspection tools, and comprehensive management information systems tools. So thank you very much, Ticket Pro Smart Tab, for your gold sponsorship. Sutari Consulting Engineering Group, previously known as Oricon. You can see their slogan is Impact Engineered. Also a gold sponsor with the Transport Forum for many years. Thank you very much, Sutari. Then we have Kuba. They're transforming ticketing as part of the ICM Mobility Group, which enables public and private transport to move into the digital era. So it's journey planning, smart ticketing, streamlining electronic payment, shaping the digital transformation of the mobility sector. Thank you very much, Kuba, for your gold sponsorship. Standard Bank, more than 160 years of experience. They believe that dreams matter and together we can make them a reality. You can see they operate in more than 20 countries in Africa and abroad. Thank you very much, Standard Bank, for your gold sponsorship. So there we go, ladies and gents. We're now back to our fun portion, and that is to do the quiz. And you might be the lucky winner of one of these three prizes. Now we're going to do it is I'm going to ask a question, and this question, the one that answers this question, all right, the first one who answered the question right is the winner of that prize. And the first prize then is the one that's been sponsored by our hosting company today, Global Trade Solution. Should the lady win the prize, and thank you, Louise, for this. Should the winner win the prize, then it will be a spa voucher. If a male person wins it, then it will be a nice dinner for two. And so here comes the question, and I'll have a look on the chat room to see who's the winner and answering the question. Right, so the question is, there's an association and their mission is to advocate for the rail industry and third-party access to the country's railway network. Who is this? There we go. Nkombile, you for first. So congratulations, Nkombile and Tembu. You answered the question right. So let me just make a note here. So Nkombile, you're the lucky winner of the spa voucher, sponsored by Global Trade Solution, and they will be in contact with you as soon as possible. Right, ladies and gents, then the second one and the third one is then these nice rechargeable LED contact lights. And here is the question. There's a company, it's one of our sponsors, and they say they do innovative solution transforming the supply chain. Who are they? Olga. Olga, you're the winner of that prize. So Olga is the winner of this one, Olga Mashilu. So I'm just making a note here. All right. Congratulations, Olga. And then the third prize, also for this rechargeable LED contact light. There's one of our sponsors, and this company, they are a leading global software as a service and a big data company for vehicle tracking, fleet management, and insurance telematics solutions. Who are they? There we go. France, you're the winner of that one. C-Track. Congratulations, France. Just making a note here. Frans Masangu. You guys are sharp this morning. I thought I'll have to give you some guidelines, but no, you're very sharp this morning. Thank you. All right, so ladies and gents, thank you, and let's give a big hand to all our sponsors and our associates for making this Transport Forum possible for more than 16 years already. I want to draw your attention to the business directory. Olga, I don't know, I see you online in the office, does won a prize. So Olga, I don't know what you personally want to tell the people more about the business directory. You can unmute yourself. I don't know this unannounced, but maybe you can tell us more. Seems to me I've been too quick on Olga. All right, let me tell you then. So Olga Mashilu, this business directory has been outsourced to Boleng Bontle Consultant. You can see there is Olga's number, so you can take a picture. Ladies and gents, this is a very well categorized business directory. And, we're getting good feedback from the companies, we're getting very good exposure through this business directory being listed. And if you want to get it listed, it's only 450 rands per annum to be on this business directory. So it's not really money. And it's also one of our BE initiatives that Olga can help you to get your company listed. So contact Olga and she'll help you to get your company listed in this business directory. All right, ladies and gents, the presentations, just quickly, the presentations actually presented at the Transport Forum over the past 16 years. There are more than 900 of them are available from this website. Very powerful knowledge base, and you can download them complimentary. Prerequisite is you need an account. So to the left of the Transport Forum website screen, you'll see there's a user login and password. Should you not have an account yet, then you can click on the sign up option, and then you can create your own account. It's complimentary, and then you can log in. And once you've logged in, then you go to events and downloads, and that should give you a very powerful, simple little search engine. 2 ways you can search for presentations. The top field is you can type in a title or a description or a person's surname, and you hit search, and it will bring you up all the presentations presented by that person over the past 16 years or anything related to that topic. Or you can go to category and you can select the date of that event, hit search, and it will bring up the presentations presented on that day. So that is great and very simple but powerful search engine for presentations. Alrighty, so now it's bringing us back to our program. And we're going to start with this exciting event, having executives from the females that's presenting today, all about gender diversity and inclusiveness in the transport, logistics, and supply chain industry. And I'm going to hand you over to our host today, Louise Widget. Before I do this, I would like to read, a little bit more about Louise before we started, and just bear with me a moment. I want to go quickly back to that slide. I like that slide. Sorry about this. There we go. Louise Widget. Let me tell you a little bit more about Louise. She's the founder and driving force behind Global Trade Solution, the company, the consulting service and software development company, which she founded as eTradex in 1999 and later renamed to Global Trade Solution. Louise and the team have been providing innovative technology solutions, services, content, and training to the international trade and supply chain community in the region for over the past 21 years. Louise holds a BCom from the University of Stellenbosch and a BCom honors from the University of South Africa, as well as a number of diplomas in international trade and project management. She has more than 25 years experience in international trade and customs environment. Prior to founding GTS, Louise worked at a major manufacturing company, as well as various export organizations in South Africa. She has performed extensive consulting in international trade enablement through the Southern and East Africa region. GTS is a well-established business with strong strategic partnerships and associations with the major role players in the international trade and supply chain environment. In addition, Louise has developed and continues to develop strategic collaboration with the statutory role players, including the World Customs Organization, the World Trade Organizations, the International Chamber of Commerce, and the various national and regional customs authorities, as well as inspection agencies and port authorities to promote the flow of information between all the role players in the international trade cycle. In addition to her company activities, Louise co-founded and has served as the chair of the Technical Service Provider Association of South Africa. She's also an associate member of many trade organizations in the Southern African region, including the Road Freight Association, where her portfolio includes all cross-border and customs-related issues. Louise has been actively involved in the customs modernization activities within the Southern African region and continues to represent and promote the needs of the trading community and supporting and empowering women in trade. On a personal note, Louise is passionate about the environment and wildlife and has traveled extensively throughout Africa, the African continent, to experience the unique wilderness experience that's still on offer in Africa. So, ladies and gents, I proudly now hand you over to Louise Widget to do the opening address for us. Thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you very much, Harry. It's always difficult when you start saying the level of experience, and then one gets a bit worried that you may be aging. But for me today is a fantastic privilege to be in the company of this group of ladies that I've met over the last few years and have worked with. Liswa, the last time we spoke, we were on a panel together and you were such a powerhouse. So I'm really, it's a great privilege to have you here. Also, Nikki, Marcella, Ray, you are all powerhouses in this industry, and it is fantastic to have you here talking on this very important subject today. I think the reason why I said to Harry, let's do this, I think, Harry, this is the first time the Transport Forum actually addresses this gender diversity and inclusiveness issue. And I think it is something that we must do on a more regular basis to keep it on the agenda and keep it as a strategic imperative for all organizations, and then particularly in the supply chain and in the international supply chain. I'm going to just do a short presentation, and for me it's really more about the context and setting where we are now, how we're going. And one of my fun things is actually to look at the unicorns that was announced last year, and to see how many of these unicorns are actually females, because that's been incredible to see the growth in this particular area. So if you don't mind to just grin and bear with me a little bit, I'm going to just Harry, I can share, hey?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me just put it in presentation mode.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Harry. As I said, this for me is a very important topic, and it's very, very close to my heart. And it is fantastic that both from a public sector point of view, we've both got Transnet and SARS being here today. And also from a private sector point of view, we've got Marcella and Nikki here today to talk around this important aspect and to share their views and their journey. Harry did ask me a little bit to share my journey so far. And it is actually interesting when you look back. I kind of started as a student in accounting, went into the finance and international trade world, became a corporate employee, and then decided maybe it's time to be an entrepreneur. It was quite funny at one of my school reunions, and I come from a very well-known school in Pretoria, Afrikaans Macy School, or as Affies, as we commonly refer to it. A lot of my alma maters actually went into academia, and I was talking to the head of the accounting department that was in matric with me. She's now the professor there, and she said to me, "Now, what are you doing?" So when I said to her, "No, I've started my own business," she said to me, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur." And I thought, okay, fine. Now I've also got a title. So my title is entrepreneur. So after starting the entrepreneurial journey, I migrated into the IT space, and particularly the IT space around international trade, and have been focusing on this particular area since then. And for me, it's been an incredible journey to see how things have changed, how IT has developed. I think for people that started in IT when I started, we still started with punch cards. Today, if you probably speak to somebody and refer to punch cards, floppies and stiffies, they think, what on earth are you talking about? But that was where the journey started. I'm now an employer with 3 companies that provide the different services that Harry highlighted. We work across the globe, and we service some of the top 100 companies in the world. And for me, that is really the passion. And in my journey, I have tried to always be a supporter and a developer of both males and females, but with a particular passion on developing women within the organization, and hence my interest and passion around this aspect. I think what is also very important for us is to understand how important it is to focus and to be there and be a mentor for other women and all the other youth coming up. Because I think once you've got the experience, you actually realize how important it is to have that mentorship. I love sharing the story about UK women in medicine, and I'm just going to touch on it very quickly. I don't know how many of you know, but in 1812, the person that was actually the Inspector General of Hospitals was thought to be a man, and upon this person's demise, they actually discovered that it was a woman. And it shows you how difficult it has been and continue to be difficult for women to really make their mark in the business place. What has happened in the transition that has happened within the medical industry, not only in the UK, but also across the globe, shows how a woman has taken up their rightful space and how they've actually put themselves on the map. So now really the proportion of women entering the medical facilities is outnumber males, and the growth in women doctors has been phenomenal. And I think across the various industries, we're hoping to see a similar trend emerging like this. I also am quite a big follower of the Rockefeller Institute, and they did some research to see really what's going on in the Fortune 500 companies, and to see if they can actually get a woman, a certain number of women into the Fortune 500 companies as CEO. And they did some research to see what is really the things that make it, not just for women, but for equity and diversity important, and what should they focus on. It's very interesting research, and it's worthwhile watching it. What they did find is that women CEOs are slightly older, because it actually takes us 30% longer to get to the corner office than men. Don't know why, but and this is fairly recent research. And they realized that they must focus on what is the common success factors that allows women to actually reach the corner office. And I would like to share that with you. So, and I think for all of us that is in the group here today that have come up through the ranks, we realize that we have to work longer and harder to get to the top. They commonly refer to this as breaking the glass ceiling. I don't think it's that prevalent anymore, but from my days, it was really hard to get through that glass ceiling. We're also driven by a sense of purpose in achieving business results, and that is very important. It's not just a focus on money, it's also more a focus on purpose and getting the business done. And I think that is very, very important attribute that stands us in good stead. It emerged over time in the research that courage, risk-taking, resilience, and agility is one of our differentiating traits. They always say women can multitask, and there's research is bearing that out. Power teams is the important aspect, and I think we touched on it, Meliswa, when we spoke before. We tend to build teams around us where we want to bring everybody up, and I think Ray is also a very good example. And Ray, sorry, I'm referring to it. She's built up an incredible, strong team around her in driving the AEO initiatives within South Africa. And quite coincidentally, quite a few of the people in the team are women, and I've watched the development and growth of those women with intrigue, and it's fantastic to see how this happens. And sadly enough, a lot of us are actually not focused on becoming CEOs, and that is something that's quite different to men, where men will come into the business environment and really want to become CEOs. And for us, it has actually happened. Also very important is, and this is why I started here, is that a lot of the women comes from financial backgrounds and use this as springboards. So my recommendation really for young aspiring women today is to say, please make sure that you get a qualification that will carry you and enable you to be able to get to the corner office. And in most instances, if you look at one of the STEM qualifications, your opportunities is broadened, and the possibility for you to get into that corner office is really increased. So I think that's something that we must also look at and start to grow within the youth and within our education system to get that focus there. Very interesting is the differentiating skills for future CEOs, and especially female CEOs, where we engage and inspire, we develop talent. As I said before, we build effective teams. We're very good at directing work with getting very clear directions. Very often women has got big courage to step into very difficult situations. And we also manage ambiguity much better than some of our counterparts. And this fits in nicely to the narrative that we're speaking about today around inclusiveness and diversity. Then I would like to say, what do we represent as women? We can influence policies. We ultimately social belongers because we still have our mother and homemaker role. We need to narrow the gap for access to education. We need to speak out, and Meliswa got on the stage and made the point very strongly in the previous engagement around addressing bias. And then ultimately, we still work in a family environment. We're very often responsible for the family support in the household, and we need to recognize that because although very often it's seen as an impediment, it is something that is part of us being women, and we need to take that into account. The disruptor list is the list that I referred to earlier, which is one of the lists that I actually watched quite closely. And just to give you an idea, this list has been in existence now for 10 years, and it really measures the investment that is made across the globe. And they refer to the people that join this list as unicorns, and also to watch the growth of the female participation in this list, because this is really the people of the future. So just to give you a bit of background, last year, 41 unicorns were added. you can have a look at the valuation of over more than 1 billion, and 14 of those were over 10 billion. Now, in most instances, this is either startup companies or very new companies. And it's quite amazing that over and above the social and environmental purpose, the top unicorn of last year was actually in the logistical sector, which is really the space that we operate in. And 10 of last year's disruptors were actually in the logistical sector, which is quite interesting. And you can see in terms of the venture capital that they raised, it is a huge amount of money. And this is normally one of the issues that women entrepreneurs complain about, is that they're not able to raise venture capital as easily as their male counterparts. If we look from a female perspective, the pandemic did really hit the female founders. Female founders only secured 2% of the venture capital dollars. In the second year in a row that the funding has declined, which is not a good sign. And it's also the smallest share since 2016. But of the 50 disruptors, 8 companies had women CEOs and 9 companies were female co-founded. And this is statistics that's gone up. What is also heartening is that the racial diversity on the list has increased. 4 companies with Black CEOs and 3 with Latino CEOs this year. And this is quite an interesting trend, which fits in with the aspect around diversity. Female companies have also risen higher on the list. It's actually the first time that 2 females are on the top 5. And again, here, the point is that we as women have raised less finance, and our ability to do a second round of financing is still constrained. So although we've made progress in this regard, there's still a long way to go. And that is why discussions like this is very important. Just to point out 2 of the industry leaders that particularly in the IT space that I operate, Jelena is one of the leading experts in operational technology around cybersecurity, growth strategy, and digital transformation. So very much the area which is important to all of us. I think now technology is so much part of our life. Data security, cybersecurity is critically important in our life. Another one that I am watching is Jennifer. Jennifer has also been involved in technology and business intelligence. Again, playing in the artificial intelligence space and machine learning, which of late has received quite a lot of negative feedback. And I don't know if any of you saw yesterday, the Beatles' last song will actually be released, and they used digital AI technology to take John Lennon's last recording and actually get it into quality to be able to make the record. So in that instance, there's a good use of AI technology, but we need to be watchful around the space, around the dark cloud that sits around AI. I think to sum up, we represent possibilities, diversity, leadership, support mechanism, not just only for the people that we work with, but also for the broader group of women, definitely policy shapers, and also economic growth is very much part of the world that we fit into. So I just want to thank you for your time. I hope I've set the stage here a little bit of where we are currently. And I do apologize for having a bit more of an IT focus, but I think it is important. It's a space that I operate in. And it's also nice to see that there are some people making good headway. Quite interesting enough, the top unicorn of last year was actually in the freight forwarding and clearing space. So again, it is a space where we operate, and it's definitely a company to watch with how they go and what they do in the future. So Harry, I think we're going to do a panel session later and not take any questions now, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And back to you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Louise. This was a great presentation. You said more focus on the IT, but I don't agree with you. I think you've been focusing on the entire industry and you're doing very important work. Just thinking about what you said, qualifications, very important. the advice you're giving to the young ladies out there. Get qualified. And very important, the building blocks you mentioned for equity and diversification in the industry. So, and it's great to see that there's 2 females in the top 5. So thank you for highlighting that. And we're very proud of the females in our industry, in our world. And thank you very much for your presentation and hosting us today. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, Harry.
Right, ladies and gents, let's have a look again at our program. So the next lady that's going to present, and that's our detailed program, it's Yulisa Khani. She's the Chief Business Development Officer of Transnet state-owned company. And yeah, she's going to talk about our topic, and that's gender diversity, inclusive in the transport, logistics, supply chain industry. And I would love to quickly read Yulisa's bio to you, and that is as following. So Yulisa Khani is Transnet Chief Business Development Officer and is responsible for revenue diversification opportunities, both domestically and in the continent for all 6 Transnet's operating divisions and increasing private and public partnerships. She joined Transnet after serving as the head of public policy in Southern Africa at Uber Technologies, where she was responsible for public policy and expansions into new markets and Southern Africa. Previously, she also held the senior government positions in Ekurhuleni Metro, the Cross-Border Road and Transportation Agency, as well as the City of Johannesburg. Amongst the many notable achievements and accolades, Ms. Khani was in 2019 named one of the top 100 women transport planners globally by the German Development Agency and the top 50 inspiring women in technology by the Kingdom of the Netherlands. She has served on various boards and currently serves as the chairperson of South African Cities Network and the NND for Cold Commercial Ports Pty Limited, a cold storage warehousing company which is a subsidiary of Transnet. Thank you very much, Yulisa. Looking forward to listening to you.
Thank you very much, Harry. Good morning, everybody. And I want to say up front, Happy Youth Day for tomorrow. Lest you forget, it's been quite an amazing journey. And I suppose, Harry, you could not have chosen a better day, which is a day before Youth Day. A lot of lives were lost, and that included fighting for women's rights. Are we there yet? I'm not quite sure. Eloise, thank you so much for your kind words as well. It's prompted me to actually start and pick up some of the salient points that you've made. And I want to just say up front, and I hope at some point we discuss this, that, you know, what people term as the unconscious biasness, but who's experienced it, is that I don't think it's unconscious at all. The minute you know that what you are doing can easily be termed as unconscious biasness, that for me says you're very much aware of the decisions that you are making that often marginalize certain groups of our society. But you know, that's just me thinking aloud. Louise, you also made a good point about us not walking into an organization with the intention of becoming a CEO. It sometimes, and I know it's changing, but sometimes feels like we have been programmed to not to be less ambitious, but to be shy about our ambitions. And I hope that at some forum we also get to talk about that, just openly walking into an environment and be clear that this is the role I am capable of assuming, and I would like to assume it. Friends of mine joke about when I come back, how we go to friends' parties and we often find the two groups. There's the mothers on this side talking about when the child started talking, when the child started walking, and then a group of men a couple of meters away with a beer on their hands about the next acquisition. And I hope that as women at some point we talk about how to collaborate some more and support each other, because I don't think that you are able to succeed in isolation of people and networks around you. But let's come back, and I thought all of those points were very important points to make, and I hope that they generate a discussion later on. So, Harry, you've said quite a few things about me, and every time you spoke, I sometimes wonder, is it really, because when you and I were speaking yesterday, you said to me, let's talk about your journey to success, and you start asking, am I really successful? Again, it speaks to, that inability to own up to your own successes, and which men do with ease. And again, this is not about bashing our male counterparts of a woman. Now, my journey started a while back. I've been fortunate enough to be a product of a girls' school. I spent 6 years of my life in a girls' school, and they shape you in a very interesting fashion, I must say. I mean, the girls' schools I went to, they were clear in our minds that there was no difference rather between yourself and the next person who happens to be of the opposite sex. I started studying social sciences, interestingly enough. I spent a year, and if my dad didn't kill me that year, he never will. He paid out of pocket my first day at Rhodes University, and end of the year I came back. I said, this is not what I want to do. Social sciences was not that. Got lost a little bit, but eventually landed with transport planning, and it was a match made in heaven, I must say. I particularly fell in love with the profession when, as young transport planners and Arab engineers at that time, were sent on a 3 to 6 months project in KZN. We were tasked with putting together the first comprehensive integrated transport plans in the country, which was delivered by the city of Johannesburg. When you look at the journey of a traveler in South Africa, it starts at 3 a.m., especially in the rural parts of South Africa. 3 a.m. You wake up, you prep the children, you prep the family, or you get ready for, you prepare for the family. So when you come back, it's not that much of a job. So for us to be able to catch the first travelers at the taxi or bus rank, we had to be there at 4 a.m. They start trickling in from 4 or 5, and then they catch the first bus or taxi at 6 a.m. to be at work at 8. And they come back again, they're at the rank in the evening at 8 p.m. So we would never leave the rank at 8 p.m. And when you start engaging, particularly with the female travelers, they tell you, I go to bed around about 10, I'm up again at about 1, 2. It is the injustice of all of that that made me fall in love with the profession. And the missing link, Harry and the audience, was that surely this is being looked at a lens of one perspective, which is somebody who's not necessarily responsible for the household. Women are caregivers. That's how I fell in love with the profession. That's how we successfully implemented projects like the BRT, which were meant to look at transport planning with a diversified lens, right? We know the unsafety conditions under which our people have to travel. So that's how I started. I was lucky enough as well to join the city of Johannesburg at the time when we were really making magic. I mean, we were well on our way to building a world African city, right? I was under the leadership or stewardship of Bob Stanway, Rehana Musaji, and as well as Amanda Naya. And why I mention these people, I think that because of their deliberateness to transform and diversify the transport division in the city of Johannesburg at that time, I don't think I would have gained the kind of experience that I have gained, right? They gave us the opportunities, they supported us to an extent that my career was made in a government department. I'm proud to say that. My career was supported by people who were well known in the industry. And I suppose that's, for me, the way I then started to see it is that unless there's a deliberate and a concerted effort to transform and diversify spaces like the transport industry, you're not going to achieve much. The other thing that came from that experience, Harry, was that when you transform, even if it's just one person within your organization or two persons, the spillage of that goes outside of your organization, because the kind of projects that we implemented in the city of Johannesburg changed the face or the experience of the commuter in the entire city of Johannesburg. And we brought in BRT solely on the basis that if you come from Soweto where Metrobus is not operating, you work in Sandton, the system takes you to the CBD before it takes you to Sandton where you work, when you actually have no business in the CBD. And we're still looking at this with the lens of a female commuter, because a female commuter's trajectory is not linear. You start at home, you drop off a kid somewhere, and then you head to work. So we wanted to make sure that we're responding to that. Fast forward to where I am, I work in a freight and logistics company. It's so beautiful to see an exco that is 50-50 split, literally. We have our male counterparts and half of us are females. And I also find it amazing that in 2023, when we walk into meetings, 3-4 of us as transit executives, there are still questions around, oh, really, this is so wonderful, remarks rather, that this is so wonderful to see an exco full of women. I mean, we met with the president of the DRC early in the year, and he said, you know, the day you come to the DRC, I'll make sure that everyone sees what real transformation looks like. I suppose, Harry, I mean, as much as there's progress, there's still a long way to go. Now, let's come back to the real issue around real transformation in the sector. I looked at, Sanlam produces what they call the Sanlam Gauge, which is an evaluation of the various sectors on the BEE scorecard. Now, I'm going to mention just a few of these, of the sectors. Construction, and I'm mentioning those that form part of the transport and freight and logistics value chain. None of them are at level 1 or 2. Construction is at level 3. ICT is at level 4. Integrated transport is at level 4. Agri-sector is at level 3. What are they measured on? Again, I'm going to pick on a few KPIs. Management control, 53.9% out of 100. ESD, 58.7%, which is the supplier development. Skills development at 66.4. The only one where these companies have done well is socio-economic development. You build a school, you build a clinic, right? So it tells you that, and these reports, I mean, it's backed by a report done by Empowerdex as well. It tells you that we still have a long way to go. Sorry for that distraction. Somebody's looking at me looking for me at the office. It tells you that we still have a long way to go. So I suppose, Harry, as much as we appreciate the fact that a lot of work is being done to transform the spaces that we work in, I think a lot of work is yet to be done. And I suppose in my parting shots is to say that diversity and transformation can never be seen as a scorecard issue. It's must. If we are to achieve the transformation of our societies, I suppose there has to be a deliberate effort across the entire value chain of the freight and logistics sector if we are to see the kind of stuff that we're beginning to see based on and Louise's Louise's first presentation. So I'm gonna hold off at this, Harry. Hopefully that I've made some compelling points that will then become a point of conversation. We have that panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elisa. A very important thing that you said there, actually, I think, is the one that the decision makers are making decisions and they're not responsible, for what they're making decisions about. And then we see that in all spheres of life. And we're not even talking politics here. Sorry, that one had to slip out. But the transformation process, transforming one person's village to the rest. I mean, clearly we see it in your personal life and what you've done in our transport sector, which we really appreciate. And mentioning the Sanlam Gauge, that we understand that a lot of work is still to be done across the entire value chain. That's so true. So I'm taking a lot that you said today, and I learn a lot from you all the time, what you do. So thank you very much for being the icon in the industry. Really appreciate it. Let's give Lisa a hand. Thank you, Lisa. Ladies and gents, let's take it back to our program. All right, so ladies and gents, our detailed program, there it is. Our next presenter is Nikki Scott. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Commercial Transport Academy. And she's also going to talk about our topic, gender diversity, inclusiveness in transport, logistics, and supply chain industry. And I quickly would like to read you a little bit more about Nikki Scott. So Nikki Scott is a trailblazer in the trucking industry in South Africa. She's the founder and CEO of the Commercial Transport Academy, being the facilitator of the Women Inspiring Women to Lead in Transport, a program that has captivated the attention of global partners and dignitaries. She is committed to gender diversity, inclusion, and equity in transport. In fact, all non-traditional occupations where women have not thrived. To further support in the industry, Nikki has established Solabix, the second SANAS approved certified body in South Africa, which will aid transporters establish compliant, resilient, and profitable businesses. Nikki founded and operated Siuduma, a niche transport company, for 23 years, where she worked closely with industry and truck manufacturers and the drivers. These years of experience in managing and motivating a team led to one of the only transporters in South Africa that was non-unionized. It also entrenched her commitment to uplifting the image of truck drivers and empowering them with knowledge and skills to be their best. Nikki's philosophy is simple. Passion is a powerful motivator to overcome barriers and succeed in worthy pursuits. Nikki is a serial entrepreneur committed to investing in innovative companies, driven to improve road safety through responsible business practices. She's an enthusiastic advocate for gender diversity, driver development, engagement in the transport sector. As a global leader and speaker, having received 7 business awards and multiple accolades, she constantly seeks out opportunities to inspire positive transformation in transport. She held a master's in business administration and is preparing to become a doctoral student. Nikki lives in Cape Town with her husband, 3 children, and a crew of dogs. She's active in various committees and associations which are dedicated to animal rights and restoring the beaches and oceans to their former glory. Thank you very much, Nikki.
I commit to shortening that bio for the next. You don't realize how hectic. Harry, you're supposed to take the highlights out of it and go like, wow, not read it verbatim. So guys, thank you very much for your time. That is quite a legacy. I am in Cape Town, as it was said, and yes, like Louise said, it is rainy. It has not stopped raining. This is my second winter in Cape Town, and it wasn't like this last year. I'm in my bedroom, guys, because my office has a metal roof. Little did I know what winter would be like and the rain. You can't hear anything there. So I've had to blur my background. I do apologize for that. But let me take you into my world in this very intimate space that I'm in this morning. As mentioned, 28 years now in transport sector, and still as energetic and as motivated as I was when I started at the age of 21. I'm just going to make the smaller so I can pull up my slide and not confuse everyone to stop that. Yeah, Harry, this thing is telling me I don't have the rights.
Nikki, are you sharing a slideshow?
I'm trying.
Oh, okay.
It's trying to okay, so maybe it's telling me I need to do an update now right in the middle of the presentation. Can you believe it? This guy.
Don't worry, there's no rush.
Okay, so I'm just going to actually then speak, because if it's not going to bring up my presentation.
You could quickly email it to me and I can flood it on your behalf.
Can you see it now?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So no, it's fine. If I do this, let's see what it does. I'm sorry, guys. This was working a minute ago. Anyway, let me speak about, just go into what we've been up to. So yes, started the Transport Academy after successfully developing the CEDUMA over 20 odd years. And during that time, and we make mention to the fact that we were not unionized. I think this success is more around the fact that the drivers felt they could trust us enough not to have a third party between us and them. It's not that there isn't value in unions, but I cherish the fact that by the time I sold my company in 2018 to a JSE listed organization, my drivers cried that they wanted us to stay in the industry. And in fact, when I see them today, that's the first thing they say, Nikki, when are you starting your business again? Because for me, human dignity is probably the most important thing. And the value of that comes from my childhood. We grew up incredibly poor my father was a truck driver, actually, and my mom didn't work, and life was very challenging. It was exposed to a lot of discrimination. Kids can be awful to one another. I remember telling people at one point in my life that my father was a pilot because I didn't want to tell them that he was a truck driver. I could justify in my head that piloting a truck was the same as any other form of vehicle. So yes, I think that history is what has shaped who I am today, in that I'm very aware of the need for people to be proud of who they are and where they come from, and to create some sort of legacy. And I want them to create legacy now, not once they've passed and we all remember what they did. So with that in mind, the Commercial Transport Academy was established, and my goal was to really empower truck drivers, both men and women, by having piloted a couple of really interesting programs to assess whether women, number one, actually wanted to participate in this industry, to give them the freedom of choice to say, yes, I want to be a driver. There aren't enough mentors, and there certainly weren't enough opportunities for women to be able to sit with other truck drivers and say, well, as a role model, what industry, what sector should I participate in? So we've really had to start from the beginning. And transformation, it's a long journey. Everyone expected immediate success. Well, if you are investing in these women, why aren't they going into the industry? Why aren't they staying? And we've had to do a tremendous amount of work. And I say this very lightly. It's been one hell of a journey creating a program to diversify a workforce or bring in any form of change in gender diversity, whether that's men coming into a female-dominated industry or the opposite, is not just about the program. You have to develop that entire ecosystem that sits behind that. And as rightly said, there's a tremendous amount of unconscious bias. There's a tremendous amount of stereotype thinking that needs to be tested. And I love the comments, you'll hear, oh, we empowered a woman. She was our tea lady, and then she did an admin course, and then she became our driver, and she's doing so well. And I'm thinking, well, this is a no-brainer. Women run families, they run homes. Why shouldn't it be an automatic transition into success? So the Commercial Transport Academy, as the CEO of the CTA, I realized that if I really wanted to have an impact, I had to scale. And I had to look at the industry in a far more detail than just simply coming up with a program. And we approached, USA approached us, but we approached them with a program that would look at the entire ecosystem. Having been awarded $2 million in 2021, we set about developing 915 women. And the program is called WeWit, Women Inspiring Women in Transport. It is quite heavily documented on social media. It's an unparalleled transport-focused skills program that is masterfully delivered by the Commercial Transport Academy, funded by USAID, provincial government, and the private sector. You know, when I look at the sponsors of who sits behind our partners behind this program, in comment of what has already been said this morning by Louise, not one of the partners actually is a female-owned organization, but they are female-led. And I make the point because the sponsors that are supporting this program are championed by men. And it worries me, the comment that was made earlier was that why aren't more women supporting women? Why do we sit and analyze what is being said by the person speaking before we get on board? Now, that could be on me. Maybe I haven't approached enough women-owned businesses. Perhaps I have reached out to a network that knows me and knows my reputation. But when I look at these sponsors, it's Hollard, UD Trucks, Volvo Trucks, CTU, OneLogix, C-Track, Afrit, Standard Bank, City Logistics, Unitrans, Careful Carriers, Lafarge, Petit Forester, the Road Freight Association, Saboa, SAPA, Exporters Western Cape, USAID, Western Cape Government, and Gauteng Government. Those are just a couple of the sponsors that make this program possible. I think we have to do a little bit more work on women supporting women, and that's what this program was about. I always feel, and I say this on a personal note, I always feel more vulnerable speaking to a woman to get support for something I'm doing than what I do with men. And I see nods there, and I was like, I don't understand this, but it's definitely something that we as women need to deal with. Now, sometimes I get a bit of criticism as to why the program is called Women Inspiring Women in Transport. Well, quite simply, the Commercial Transport Academy is a woman-owned organization. But more than that, I felt that it would take this ecosystem of women we're developing to really change the narrative. So in that, in that note, we set about developing 300 or supporting 300 entrepreneurs, SMMEs. And I thought that would be quite easy. I thought, well, they're out there. The truth is, guys, they're not. When men say, where are the women? There are a couple of really successful women-owned transporters, and these are fleet owners, and they are in the forefront of industry and in tenders. But when we really look at the micro and the SME environment, they're not there. There is a massive gap between those that are emerging and want to participate in the industry and don't know how, to those that have successfully set up their companies and are able to participate in tenders. And that shaped how we designed the program that we now deliver, which is Women Inspiring Women in Logistics. It's We Will. It's just an acronym of the We Would program. We realized that while many of the women needed, and these are not all 100% women-owned businesses, these could be co-owned businesses, but it needed to be a woman in the leadership position, in the steering seat. We knew that we had to help them with the technical stuff, so their business profile, the unique business proposition, their marketing strategy, their financial management, understanding everything from a budget through to a balance sheet. So that was all the technical stuff. But what we added was a unique program, which is called the Guru Workshops. 15 gurus, industry leaders, and that is both men and women here, have stepped up. And they run 60 to 90-minute workshops with these ladies, all online, educating them on their industry, their skill, their profession. It varies. It varies from the Road Freight Association talking about permits and how to access permits, to what commodities are actually moving cross-border, so a bit more about what's happening, to something as easy as what should be, and it's not, it's really complicated, our social media branding. When is enough enough? When have you said too much on social media? What are you participating in? What does your image look like out there? So we cover all of this, and I think that this is what makes this program so special. And we're just finalizing the final stage with one of the associations, which I hope to roll out for all the associations already mentioned today, that at the end of the 4 to 8 month program, because the Guru workshops take it into about 8 months, the ladies will actually complete a mock tender. So this is an actual tender document that has been released to industry. They will complete their tender from their learnings. They will supply all the statutory documents to support that tender, and that's all their compliance and everything else. They will submit that to the CTA, and we will evaluate that tender. And based on their compliance and the success of their tender, we will have them listed as SMMEs for the associations to circulate. And Olga, we need to talk as well, because I think that this is definitely where we can also get more of these SMMEs onto your platform. So the WeWork program is aligned to 8 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I think this is really important because we really are looking at some of the issues around no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, reducing inequality, and global partnerships for sustainable development. Last week, Thursday, the Commercial Transport Academy's WeWork program won a new award. It's our second since launching the program. We won the Flourish Prize Global UN Award number 5 for gender equality. I think it's an amazing triumph. Thank you, Louise. And the year before that, we obviously won the Supply Chain Award for Excellence. So I think, guys, what I want to make mention to is that the program right now is developing entrepreneurs under We Will. We are developing female commercial drivers. These commercial drivers are truck drivers from the 4-ton up to the extra heavy environment. The women, men and women, so there's a 20% male representation on all our programs, but the men that are coming into the program are learning firsthand to work with women in the space of both of them being incredibly vulnerable. It is wonderful to watch how women speak up when we're doing the soft skills around GBV, sexual harassment in the workplace. There's a whole lot, self-esteem and how to be interviewed. And then they don't want to speak and they're uncomfortable and you can just see they're edgy. And then when you go outside and do the technical stuff on the truck, suddenly the men just blossom and the women withdraw. And the two of them just really complement one another in that environment. So the development of the truck drivers is really a major focus for me personally, because of the fact that it is a scarce skill, because of the fact that women only make up about 1.2% of the working population in both truck and bus. And courier, we don't know, but it seems to be even worse. We know that women can successfully manage a articulated vehicle. There's no reason why they're not in this space, other than the fact that we have to overcome stereotypes and belief systems. There's, a driver trainer that's been told to go out and assess a couple of female applicants. If the message did not come from the C-suite that this is something that the organization is actively embracing with gender diversity in their driving force, you can guarantee that that lady is going to have a tough time through that interview process, simply because he is not aware of the unconscious bias he has towards women, because it's common. Everyone says it. We make fun of it. Look at every SUV in Sandton, they're damaged and it's a woman driver. We made these jokes for years. So it takes a lot, but what I can say is once the ladies have the skill and the confidence, they master the industry. The data that's coming out of the sector is so welcoming as to how well women are doing, with 72% less coachable incidences. They're driving bottom line saving, guys. So by having more women as your truck drivers, your couriers, bus drivers, just that alone not only drives sustainability, but you can improve your profitability with less wear and tear, less accidents, and higher fuel consumption. But what is really important to me is that we are recruiting young men and women from some of the most vulnerable communities in South Africa, communities that have been overlooked or have been through some sort of short skills program, but have never actually been through an occupational training program. These women present with CVs, with layers and layers of certificates, but they just can't secure work. Well, our program is, the truck driver program is between 4 and 6 months. It honestly depends on how long it takes at the licensing office and how many attempts the ladies need to get their license. It's a technical, a heavy, it's the only one of its kind in South Africa, and we've confirmed this on numerous levels, but it's a technical program, it's a soft skills program, it's acquiring the license, all of this fully funded, and then we bolt on 6 to 8 months of work experience. So some of the organizations that I read out actually host the learners and give them exposure to driving. OneLogics, who bought my company in 2018, the agreement of the sale was that they would host my learners. Little did they know I was going to put through 720 truck drivers through their organization. They thought it would be just a handful. So they've had to adopt that. But you know what it means, guys, is that all of my ladies that have been through the TruckLogics environment, they can drive 13 OE products that are manufactured or imported into South Africa. The advantage of that means that no matter where they get tested and assessed, they can drive a UD, they can drive a Volvo, a Mercedes-Benz, a Scania. It makes no difference, because that company, that division of OneLogics is a division that bought me, where we would transport brand new trucks from the assembly facility. I was listening, and I just want to find her name because I want to pronounce it correctly, but I'm almost done. I know, because you can give me 20 minutes and I'll make it an hour. But I was listening to an interview by a lady, Miriam Jame, who is on a mission to educate and create 1 million coders from the refugee environments. And I was listening to some of the challenges she was experiencing with these young girls that come onto the program. And I don't want to take away any of the hardships of the refugee camps, but we see the same things here, where she talks about that the students are hungry during their coding experience. Well, so are our communities. Our ladies are coming from some of the most impoverished environments where very often they don't even bring food to class. So we've had to make it part of our program. We know that the ladies struggle with a lot of trauma that they've experienced, and this impacts on how they see the world. Just a quick example, one of the things I learned in the Western Cape, and it's so different to Gauteng, is that the ladies can drive. They can, in like 2 minutes, they can pull the truck into a parking and do their alley docking perfectly. And then when they arrive at the licensing office and get tested, as the testing officer walks up to the vehicle, his image alone is enough to create such amount of stress that those ladies fail not once, up to 4 times. But we will not send them to be tested until we know they are competent. So you can see the impact of whatever it is that they bring into the workplace. And guys, to close off, it's not enough for organizations, and I think it was so valuable. Gender diversity, equity, equality should not be a scorecard thing. I love that. It should not be a scorecard issue. It should be a moral issue that all organizations sit back and say, all right, while we're ticking the box on social economic development, I put it out there to all the organizations. We are developing qualified, capable truck, courier, bus drivers, and now motorbike drivers for the 18 to 22-year-old category. Give them a chance through your employment equity element. Give us a call and let us assist you with your change management leadership or change leadership or change management process, so you can incorporate more women. And give these young men that are being developed properly through not by buying their license, but through a legitimate program, give them a chance to actually become part of your organization and a part of industry. And then in terms of our SMMEs, these ladies deserve an opportunity to at least present their companies. And sometimes it is so hard to get beyond reception, to get to the procurement divisions, to speak to the right people. We need to do more, Louise. That would be our next challenge, is that we find better ways to create procurement days for micro enterprises to really be able to present their organizations. And to close all of this off, guys, it will only be launched on the 13th of July. One of the outcomes of running this program for the last 2 years has been the fact that we recognize that our roads do offer some challenges. We don't have truck stops for women, not many anyway. It is quite a challenge out there for women to do long haul, which is where the salaries are. the long haul drivers are earning between 28 and 35,000 a month. If we really want to elevate these ladies, we had to do something about the truck stops. So we have created a new association, which is currently being funded by USAID as well, but we have the most amazing partners on board, new partners to what WeWit has partnered with, and Safer Stops will be addressing the health and well-being of our truck drivers so that we can drive safer roads for everyone. And most of all, that we can get our drivers to the point that they have restored dignity and they can become role models for their children. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you for your time, Nikki. It was a great presentation. And I see you getting some hands there. So, Nikki, thinking about what you said, so important to be proud of who you are. And that's the important work you're doing, is actually to make ladies proud who they are and give them, the choice, the freedom of choice. So you clearly understand transformation, which is a long journey. And you have to develop this ecosystem in the midst of a lot of bias, and you've got clearly the experience doing that. So inspiring women in transport, clearly, breaching the gap between, the upcoming and the successful. And you have to develop entrepreneurs across the entire value chain. And that's what Yulisa also alluded to, it's so important, this development across the entire value chain. And clearly that's what you guys are doing. So it's all about skills and confidence, helping ladies to get there, to have the skills and have confidence in what they do. It's very much a moral issue, and we're looking forward to this 13th of July launch. So thank you, Nikki. Really appreciate your presentation. It was great.
And Harry, I have to interject because Nikki hasn't shared one thing. And for me, it's always so inspiring listening to her. I think the Safer Stops initiative that they are launching is critically important because overall, we realize it's not only the female drivers, but also the male drivers that needs to get into a more conducive and holistic environment of working in a safer environment. Nikki had some very interesting experiences, and Nikki, I hope you can share that also with the group around bringing female drivers into a predominantly male environment and what the interplay and the reaction was. I think, Nikki, that's something that's critically, because my instant reaction was, I presume there was negativity and pushback, and she can share what actually came out of it. And I think overall, it brings us back to the diversity discussion. So over to you, Nikki. Sorry.
I got more time.
Got more time.
Awesome. Yes. So initially, when I sold Siaduma, I was right in the middle of a learnership of 15 women, and One Logics had never employed a single female driver at that point. And they said, it's not going to work. There was not only One Logics. I was also working with a couple of big organizations in the FMCG industry, and they were saying, women are a distraction. Oh, I love that one. For the men, women have responsibilities around family planning, and it's probably why women take so long to get to the C-suite, because we do have that 5 to 10 years that we take out to build families. But more than that, in terms of an operator, if we have women drivers, we can only send her on certain routes. We can only allocate her to certain loads because of the risk. I heard them all. And the big thing for me was, they would always come back after I'd overcome every one of those objections. The last one would be, but Nikki, the violence, the risk of women being raped, the risk of sexual harassment, we can only do so much to protect them. The truth is once the ladies got into the workplace, and this can be confirmed by any of the organizations that we have worked with to date, is that the men have actually embraced having women in the workforce. They have made it very clear that they enjoy the conversation, the diversity in the conversation. There has been no cases of sexual harassment, touch wood, that have been brought to our attention. Organizations started with keeping ladies on a very local and on a small radius around their organization, and now after a year or so they are comfortable to send them long distance. We are having ladies stay at the truck stops. I drove up to Johannesburg last week so that I could do an assessment of all the truck stops on the N1. I was blown away by how open the men were to talking to me. I literally sat on the pavement with them and interviewed them. And the first question I would ask them is, how do you feel about female truck drivers? And they said to me, they think it's fantastic. And they would support their sisters, as they called it. But you know what, the one thing they did mention is that the woman mustn't come into their industry with an attitude. He said the one guy said that he parked his truck at a truck stop and he looked to his left and he saw that there was a lady next to him. And he wound down his window and her window was open and he said hello to her and she wound up her window and pulled the curtain closed. And he said to me, he thinks that's so rude. He said, I don't know what it is that women just think we want to have sex with them. And I just laughed because, again, this is a stereotype that drivers live with. But he asked me, please, to make sure that we educate the ladies, because his exact words was truck driving is a brotherhood. And I know that we got this gender thing here, but he said, you need to be part of that. These ladies need to become part of this driver brotherhood. Otherwise, when they break down, the men won't stop for them. If they've been rude, if they've been inconsiderate. And that gave me something else to work on and to take home. But guys, I can honestly say to you, and I would never put people at risk, and I've been asked this on many, many occasions, am I not being quite reckless in this program? The answer is no. There are definitely environments that women are succeeding. The oil industry, fantastic. The fuel industry, the mining industry. There are areas that women are excelling in. And the long haul, we just need to do a little bit more work to create those passages and to do the education. And yes, it might require a bit more work to work with employers, to educate drivers. But I think what we're actually going to do with Safer Stops is create conversation. As part of it will be that men and women sitting together to create conversation. So thanks for bringing that up, because it is a stumbling block, Louise.
And Nikki, and coincidentally, Yolanda asked the question on the chat, and I didn't even see that. But I think it is something that we mustn't underestimate, because in any industry where there's this imbalance around diversity and inclusiveness, it does create a culture which is not necessarily the culture that we want. And I think that is part of the work that the RFA is also doing around safety, security. I think particularly the comment around long distance driving, it is a difficult life. I think, Yolanda, you asked the question about work-life balance. I think us as women in general have got good backup systems, and that is the way to organize it. But there's also a lot of initiatives on short haul operations. There's a program looking at women, particularly running vehicles into the ports, which is a very short distance, and it's normally quite a day-orientated job, if I can call it like that. So I think it is important that we look at the low-hanging fruit where we can build up and bring more women in, but also then the more strategic long-term areas like the long-distance haulage. I think in general, truck stops needs to be looked at holistically across the continent, just not in South Africa, because if we want to have safety on the road, we need to ensure that those truck stops don't only do, refueling, but the concept around, healthy food, possibly exercise areas, all those kind of things are important. And it's not entirely there yet, but it's something that Nikki and her program and, for example, the RFA is looking at working together to create that infrastructure and everything. So I hope Nikki's shared her enthusiasm. And Nikki, thanks for posting your contact details, because please, anybody that wants to participate or wants to be part of the program or wants to make a contribution or take up drivers, she's the lady to go to. We want the numbers to go up. I think, Nikki, your target is 2,000, if I remember correctly. So we need to get there collectively and together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise and Nikki. Great having you guys on the session and learning a lot here. Ladies and gents, what we're going to do now, let me quickly share our program. We're going to take a short break. Let's take a 15 minutes break. I'll put up the timer for us. And then after the break, it's to another very exciting presentations, Ray will be here and Marcelo and Slapo. So let's take a short 15 minutes break. Grab that cup of coffee. See you just now. Alrighty, ladies and gents, let's continue with this great session. Please take up your seats again, and we're going to still talk about that very important topic of ours, and that is a dialogue on gender diversity and inclusiveness in the transport, logistics, and supply chain industry. And ladies and gents, as you can see, the next presenter we have is Ray Vivier. She's the head of Authorized Economic Operator of South African Revenue Services. She's going to talk about trade facilitation and gender dimensions, a customs perspective. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you, Harry, and good morning to everybody. As Harry has said, my name is Ray Vivier. As you can see, I've been 1,000 years in the industry and still in the South African Revenue Service.
Ray, can I rudely interrupt you there? Sorry, I forgot to read your bio, and I would love to read your bio quickly. So apologies for this. So Ray Vivier has had a varied career with SARS, most of it in the customs division. The highlights of her career include spearheading the comprehensive modernization of trade processes and earned the World Bank's Most Improved Customs in the World vote in 2012. In her current portfolio, Ray is focused on developing cooperative compliance programs with trade partners and government agencies, and initiatives she is leading include developing a single regional authorized economic operator, a single government authorized economic operator program, and a new licensing framework for licensed intermediaries. She's an accomplished leader, experienced in large business operations in more than 30 localities, extremely passionate about trade facilitation and building a tax and customs system based on voluntary compliance. Ray is skilled in maintaining positive relations with stakeholders and working with and through them to build the customs ecosystem. She's committed to excellence and making a difference. Ray was elected as the Customs Vice Chair of the World Customs Organization's Safe Framework Working Group in 2022. She has a master's degree from the University of Canberra. Thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Harry. It's very much a girl thing. I suggest that we don't like hearing our bios being read, but thank you very much. As I was saying, therefore you can see it's 1,000 years in the business and 1,000 good years. I was, whilst I was preparing the presentation, I recalled the world I joined way back in the late 80s. Of international trade, where it was assumed back then that women would just slot into the cultures that had been designed entirely by and for men. To be successful back then, we learned how to talk man or talk male and dress male. We wore power, many of you may recall the power suits with the large shoulder pads. But thankfully, I believe that our capacity in our confidence in our capacity to do the work that we do in this particular environment in our own authentic way has flourished over the years. And at the risk of falling into gender stereotyping, I suggest that women may finally have the edge in this world of international trade. I am going to share my presentation now. Harry, you will tell me if it's there.
It's there, just slide view, then it's perfect.
There we go. Thank you. So I'd like to turn our attention to the data points regarding women in trade, and in particular, the data points of women in trade in Africa. So I'm going to start with some I'm going to start with highlighting why women in trade is so important to all of us and why we should be consuming ourselves with how do we ensure that they continue to flourish in our environment. So according to the World Bank and the World Trade Organization, trade has the potential to expand women's role in the economy, to decrease inequality, and to expand women's access to skills and education. Very importantly, too, through trade, women have an opportunity to move into higher skilled work through trade. So for me, that just underscores how important it is that we continue to develop and put so much effort into developing women exporters, importers, women trading across borders, particularly in the African context. The data points regarding women in trade in Africa are also really, really very interesting, and very interesting in that in some instances, I would suggest that some of these findings from the studies that have been done also underscore some of the points that Nikki raised, that female truck drivers do experience, and that is that you'll find that women that are trading in Africa find that there is limited access to representation in professional networks and decision-making processes. They find that there is an absence of an enabling environment for their activities. Now, the African Union Assembly decided and put in place in February 2022 that the AFCFTA agreement should have interventions that support young Africans, women, small and medium-sized businesses, and cross-border traders. They then brought that thinking into a protocol on women and youth in trade in the scope of the AFTA agreement. The AFTA Secretariat with the UNDP and the United Nations, UN Women, rolled out national consultations in 2021, targeting in particular women in trade, to capture their trade experiences, the challenges that they experience, and all of this was to then prepare us for the negotiations of this protocol on women and youth in trade, which we are very proud to be part of as SARS. Interestingly, they were able to gauge the reactions and the input of 26 countries in Africa with over 1,600 stakeholders, which included then female leaders, female entrepreneurs and exporters, women in business associations, chambers of commerce, civil society organizations, NGOs, government officials, and the academia in the findings that, in capturing the findings that they were able to share. And probably one of the most interesting one for us, of course, is the access to information and knowledge on trade-related issues. And certainly from my perspective, this is something that we could all do more about in collaboration with each other. The access to representation in professional networks and decision-making processes, whilst certainly government, I believe, can enhance their access for female traders and in particular cross-border traders, I do think that there's opportunity for the private sector also to start reaching out to women involved in cross-border trade or in the international trade environment, and bring them on board specifically to some of their associations, and obviously then the benefits that are attached to that association. Because women have said it's an impediment to them reaching regional and global value chains, which are traditionally a male-dominated sector, because they're not represented in the same way. So I think that's interesting food for thought for all of us. In creating an enabling environment for trade activities by women, in specific, the finding was that government, in particular customs, because of its bureaucratic nature, is not available to them where they are. And what I take away from that finding is, so if I'm trading at the Zimbabwe border at Musina and at Bite Bridge, using Bite Bridge, there's the access to customs for women is limited because the decision making may be at a national level. And I think that's food for thought for us as a customs administration in terms of how we make ourselves more accessible, in particular to female cross-border traders. For me, of course, on the last bullet point here, that clearly women have cited challenges as being poor transformation infrastructure, bribery, and corruption. The one that really sort of shocked me was sexual harassment, and then I realized I was probably being very naive. That women reported that they invariably experienced large levels of sexual harassment, and more importantly, the lack of a complaint mechanism to report sexual harassment in the work whilst they're doing it or going about their business was something that I believe we all again could consume ourselves with in terms of, well, how do we help? How do we ensure that a woman who is, for example, sexually harassed in a border post, that she's safe and that she's protected and she has somewhere to go? So I do think that that is something that we should all be considering for the plight of women in trade. I would like to move on to the informal cross-border trade in Southern Africa, because I think it also paints a different picture to sort of small businesses that are trading perhaps across international borders, so for example, from ourselves to the EU, and then look specifically at the African context and our land borders. And in this regard, we can rely on a study done by USAID, albeit slightly dated. I think it was in about 2015. And there may be others that are available, but I did find that this was very specific and important for us just to concentrate on. So informal cross-border trade in Africa provides an income source for a whopping 43% of the African population. So it certainly is so important that we consider informal cross-border trade in all that we do when we're designing policies, when we're designing the border posts, when we're designing the enabling environment for this, for women in trade, that we consider that 60%, between 70 and 80% of informal cross-border traders in Southern Africa are women. That's a whopping amount. Okay. And more than 60 of them are complaining about significant corruption by officials in border posts. And they are also reporting that there's a significant information gap between themselves and customs officials. So there's our challenges as a customs administration, not only in South Africa, but within the Southern African region. How do we ensure that we knowledge specific to informal cross-border traders and assist them to be able to do the work that they need to do when they're trading their goods across these borders? Expanding on the women in trade in South Africa in particular, we have the latest World Bank Group report that was done in conjunction with many of you that are online with us today. And I think their findings also just, again, underscore the fact that we need to do something to improve women in trade, that we need to ensure that women in trade are able to benefit from the trade facilitation initiatives that are available not only in this country, but also within the region, that they're able to benefit from those trade facilitation benefits and that they, in fact, then would be able to flourish, be able to do the work that they do faster, and also then ensure that they're able to get to market a lot cheaper as a result of this trade facilitation benefits. So I'd like to move on to the various recommendations from the various studies, and certainly there were many. So I've tried to pull out those that I think are specific to today's conversation relating to trade and relating to customs. But some very interesting findings in my opinion. So for example, we should be reviewing our trade laws and our policies to integrate gender, but also that when we are scripting policies and trade laws, we should be wearing a gender lens. And I think that that is something that we probably haven't yet explored as much as we should have, to wear a gender lens when we do design policies that talk to how one would trade across the border, what's the documentation required, etc., etc. That we need to promote an enabling policy environment for export promotion for women in cross-border trade activities. So again, what is that enabling policy environment? Is it really just involving women in the discussions around developing the policy environment, or should there be a specific area in our policies relating to trade activities that talk specifically to women and to gender issues? And I think that's a question that we probably would all want to discuss in a lot more detail and see what's the sort of proposals that we could come up with that would in fact create an enabling environment for women. Certainly also sort of broad stroke recommendation was we need to improve access and understanding of official border regulations and procedures. And one that I thought was really, really very nice was that we should consider establishing help desks dedicated to women at border posts in particular, to assist them with any of the queries they may have, any of the challenges they may have. Anybody who's been to any of our international land borders will tell you that on the whole, the informal cross-border traders coming either in from or leaving South Africa are women, carrying huge, big baggages on their shoulders, or you know, having to sit on top of their produce to ensure that it doesn't get stolen, or we find in some instances if they have fresh produce, it perishes because we don't have facilities at our border posts to allow them to store their goods. So I think that there's really quite a lot of work we could do for the plight of informal cross-border traders who are female, but obviously also then for those who are male as well, because the same facilities do not exist for them. We want to ensure that we're able to promote women's full participation and equal representation in negotiations. And I believe that there's quite a lot of work for us to do in that regard to ensure that there is, in fact, representation at the levels, sorry, my phone, at the levels that we should have it at. I want to then just move on to why I'm here today. And this is unashamedly trying to sell a program or market a program to you, and that is the Authorized Economic Operator Program. And the reason why I chose to do so is because I realized that information on the Authorized Economic Operator Program tends to be in the hands of a select few, and that tends to be either large or medium-sized businesses. And yet we haven't yet reached, to the extent that I would like, our small, medium enterprises, and in particular, women in gender. So I hope that you will all forgive me and indulge me and allow me to do a little bit of marketing because it's a great program. And it's a program that certainly would be able to help female transporters, certainly would help female exporters or importers, and would also help female cross-border traders, informal cross-border traders. So ladies and gentlemen, there was a few gentlemen I did see. It's called the AAO Advantage, and you're asking, so what is that? You may or may not be aware, it is a flagship customs to business partnership program. It's our flagship because it offers an opportunity for customs to share its compliance and security responsibilities with the private sector, and at the same time rewards them with several trade facilitation benefits. Partnership programs of this nature with trade allow us and customs to achieve more with less effort, with a goal to ensuring sustainable and long-term compliance through the incentives that we offer through the program. So in non-technical language, for those of you that don't necessarily come from the international trade world, it's an internationally endorsed risk management approach that seeks to collaborate with trade supply chain entities who maintain high quality internal operational processes and have an appropriate record of compliance. And they in turn receive benefits to support the growth of their business. It is an international program, so you will find that there are many countries around the world that have an AAO program, and in that, of course, is another little bit of magic when it comes to benefits, because we are able to negotiate mutual recognition arrangements with our trading partners. And that implies that if you have AAO status in South Africa and you are exporting, for example, to China, if South Africa and China enter into a mutual recognition arrangement, what then happens is you are offered the same benefits that a Chinese AAO would get in China. So you would get a decreased inspection rate, you would get faster processing, and you would be treated differently from non-AAO exporters to that country. So very, very compelling benefits attached to that part of the program. So let's move on to, why am I telling you about all of this? Because how does this really relate to women in trade? Well, I'm very, very pleased to announce that part of our program is the realization that there are challenges for SMEs to become fully fledged AAOs. And certainly there are also challenges for female traders in becoming AAOs. And this is certainly something that is a concern that is shared by the World Customs Organization. They acknowledge that there are challenges regarding reaching out and educating this community on AAO benefits and what the AAO program is, but at the same time that there are issues of costs, that the proportionate cost impact of the security investments that are required for you to be part of this program, it's greater on SMEs than it is on larger companies. So to address this concern, our position is that we in South Africa should have a program specifically designed for SMEs and for women in trade. It should be, in our opinion, a simplified process, perhaps at an entry level into the program, and there would be corresponding benefits attached to that entry level. One would hope that through our efforts that small businesses would grow and become medium size, and also then be able to outlay some of the financial costs in becoming compliant with the security requirements, and therefore move up on the continuum of benefits to be offered. So we have a pilot project currently underway with SMEs and women in trade to design collaboratively based on the needs of those particular businesses, what this simplified process or this entry level part of the program would look like. And once we have the learnings from that pilot, we would then collaboratively design not only the program, but also then any of the legislation that we may require to support this particular segment of business. What I'm also really excited about, it's a concept we launched in late 2020, and that is that we adopt a single AAO program within the South African Customs Union. And some of you may have followed it in the press. Late last month, we signed the mutual recognition arrangements between all 5 members of the South African Customs Union, which implies that we will now be able to develop a AAO program within SACU that would confer benefits in South Africa and equally in Eswatini, or in South Africa and equally in Lesotho, and vice versa. I think that certainly will open up a market to some of the SME and female traders who do business at these particular border posts or do business within the SACU region. So very exciting developments in that regard. We're also currently digitizing the AAO program. Right now, it's still a manual program. So digitizing both the application and the workflow process. And the idea there is to be able to make it accessible to anyone, anywhere, so that somebody can do business with SARS as an AAO, hopefully if they're at a far-flung border post on their mobile device, so that they're able to interact with customs wherever they are and whatever time they need to interact with us. What's also very interesting is this is a joint initiative with the private sector. So whilst we will in SARS design the sort of the front end of receiving the application and obviously the back end of the processing or the workflows, the private sector has undertaken to develop what they term a trade portal. The idea behind that trade portal is to provide the knowledge that would be required, particularly by SMEs and female traders. So to provide them with the knowledge base to support them with the appropriate knowledge, and then also to support them in their application process, etc., etc. I think it's a great initiative, and certainly one that is receiving quite a deal of interest from the World Customs Organization, particularly if it could be designed as an open source portal that could perhaps then be adopted around the world, but in particular in developing countries. So therefore, I foresee that within Africa, there's quite a large impact it could make if we were able to open that up to African traders. We also have a joint SARS private sector AAO working group. And that is, its purpose is for us to collaborate, to improve the AAO programs, to design an AAO program that talks to what traders want, but also then to leverage each other's strengths to resolve the challenges and to improve voluntary compliance going forward. And I think the previous example of us collaborating to design a system and to digitize the entire AAO process is a perfect example of where we can collaborate and add value for the benefit of not only ourselves, but also the traders that we represent. So perhaps just to elaborate on the benefits and just to underscore, the benefits for all. The program offers benefits for all. So we even in customs walk away with some benefits, and those benefits are, for example, we get to see increased trade facilitation at our borders. We get to see an increased voluntary compliance, and we get to see increased security increased levels of higher security in the supply chain or in the value chain of trade moving across our borders. We also therefore enjoy reduced costs in border management because AO trade should flow relatively freely through the border. So it allows us then to concentrate our scarce resources on high-risk operators as opposed to concentrating on highly compliant AO traders. For businesses, the benefits are enhanced trade facilitation that provides even more incentive for increasing levels of compliance, and your trade facilitation benefits. Probably the one that provides you the greatest saving is the fact that you would enjoy a lower risk scoring on our automated risk targeting tools, which implies that you would have less frontline interventions when you are trading or declaring your goods to customs. And that is quite a substantial benefit. One of our AOs says that they save 30,000 Rand per container per day because of the reduced risk rating and therefore the fact that there are less interventions at the border. You can extrapolate that across however many shipments you may or may not be bringing in or taking out of the country. And I think the benefits are clear and compelling. And then you receive enhanced service from our surveys. Certainly the most appreciated benefit is the fact that you are allocated a customer relationship manager, and that person then helps you through all of your SaaS interactions, whether it's tax, whether it's customs. They're there to guide you almost like a private banker, but better. But certainly that is a benefit that many of our AOs have suggested is a really compelling benefit. So in conclusion, let me just sum up. I know I'm running out of time. I, like Nikki, can take an hour if you give me 15 minutes. So in summing up, trade has the potential to expand women's role in the economy and to increase and expand their access to skills, to education, to higher skill work. So it is clear that it's an area that we need to focus on. A large percentage of informal cross-border traders in the Southern African region are women, and they face significant challenges, and those, I believe, are challenges that we should all be consuming ourselves with. The AO program, this comes to my marketing blurb, can assist to provide women traders with increased trade facilitation and improved supply chain security that will help them flourish, and perhaps more importantly, provide even greater incentives for voluntary compliance that would then again ease the compliance burden on not only business but on customs, and therefore allow us to do our job a lot more effectively and a lot more cost effectively if we have more and more compliant traders in our network. I'd like to thank you for your attention, ladies and gents. It has really been my honor and great privilege to present to you today. I'd like to leave you with the following thoughts. I believe that we should demand that the next turning point in our story has a broader reach. Or as Anne Sweeney puts it, we need to define success in our own terms. We need to achieve it by our own rules, and we need to build a life that we're proud to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ray, for this great presentation. This was great. Yeah, looking at what you've actually told us, it's so important. I really didn't know that 70 to 80% cross-border trade is done by women. That's incredible. So it's so important, to create a world that's actually make it more suitable for women to trade. And important thing is, how do we help? How do we all help to make this a better world for women as well? Because at this stage is very much limited, as you said. And again, what a lot of the ladies said here today is that decisions are made on people on a different level. And that's a big problem. Concerning the corruption we see about and the information gap, trade laws and policies should create an enabling environment for women. And then the great AEO program that you shared with us with compelling benefits. We surely hope you're achieving your goal and this becoming a single program. And thinking again about the 70 to 80% women trading. So let's get the women to comply as soon as possible so that they can leapfrog into this industry. I think that's the important thing. So I think increased, trade facilitation, voluntary, panels and compliance, higher security, freight flow focus actually on high risk, the attention on high risk people, and enhanced services from SARS. I think that's worth their while to be compliant to the AEO. So thank you so much, Ray. Really appreciate this presentation. And I'm quite sure they're looking forward to talking to you in the questions and answer session. Thank you, Ray. All right, ladies and gents.
Harry, just to interject again, and Ray,
Yes.
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm very glad Ray shared the AEO program because it is actually one of the tools that is available to trade, particularly to ensure better trade facilitation and put themselves in a position. So Harry, if you look at Ray's figures of women traders, which is well known, and you add youth traders to that, it shoots up considerably more. And I think that's why it's important that we do realize that this specific segment needs focus. We need to make sure that we look after them. They have got different needs. And Ray, I'm going to take the opportunity to maybe just share the example that Rwanda Customs did during COVID, which was remarkable, and it was done by the Rwanda commissioner, who happens to be a lady. Where they realized that under COVID restrictions, because it was so difficult to move across the border, and the women go over the border virtually every day, multiple times, they set up a co-op structure where only one person would then go over and get all the goods for the whole co-op. And that was a remarkable quick intervention that they did to keep this flow of goods going and to help specifically the women traders. So it was a really good example of where trade and customs under difficult circumstances work very well together. And I also must share from the customs perspective, we recently had a customs and private sector dialogue around gender diversity and inclusiveness in Lesotho, which was very well attended by what we call East and Southern Africa region. And it is something that the agenda that we collectively between the Customs Authority and the private sector want to drive. And this initiative today is actually also flowing out of that to get more people to attend. The planning is really to have a fully fledged conference later in the year that we can unpack these things, look at policy guidelines, look at how we can influence and make it easier for these various traders. So Ray, again, thank you very much. And sorry, she's very coy. I need to do her bragging on her behalf. Ray has actually been elected as the vice chair of the Safe Working Group of the World Customs Organization, which is a remarkable achievement. I think, Ray, if I'm correct, you're the first person from Africa to take that role. So we definitely have a powerhouse here on the customs front, on the AEO front, and on the trade facilitation front here. And I want to say to all the trade partners that's on the call, customs is your friend, hold hands. And we are very often here, we don't want to go into the building because we're afraid of them, but they actually are very friendly, very cooperative. And Ray and her team is one of those teams that really make you feel welcome and want to assist. So Ray, maybe if you want to comment on the various initiatives, welcome to, but I just think it's important that we show that we're holding hands and we're working across the private sector and the public sector jointly, and having Uliswa here is a good indication of that as well today. So thank you very much, Harry.
Harry, I won't comment in the interest of time, but by the way, I just wanted to add, there's some interesting studies out there that suggest that during COVID, it was informal cross-border traders that kept food security or insecurity at levels that were sustainable during the COVID pandemic. So it's just fascinating what women informal traders were able to do even during those awful times. And I love the initiative that you talked to. I wish that we'd all been so innovative in what we could have done at our border posts as opposed to just closing them down. So thank you. And as for your lifting my ego, thank you, Louise. It's really nice, but not needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Yeah, I think, Ray, we're truly proud of you, and you're breaking barriers for us, and we need to recognize and acknowledge that. So thank you for all your hard work.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Right, ladies and gents, our last but not least speaker for the session is Misela Nhlapu. She's the Chief Executive Officer of the African Rail Industry Association. She's also going to talk about our topic for the day, gender diversity and inclusiveness in the transport, logistics and supply chain industry. I would like to quickly read her bio. So Misela Nhlapu is Chief Executive Officer of the African Rail Industry Association, having headed its predecessor, the Railroad Association of South Africa. Holding a BCom in marketing and an LLB degree, she has more than 20 years of experience in manufacturing and technical business development. She has started her career as a quality control manager at Protec Galvanizers. Misela is the Department of Transport Economics and Logistics Management Advisory Board member at the Northwest University. She also serves as Africa Director for the Rail Working Group. Misela was recently voted the top speaker at the 2021 Railway Regulator Conference. Misela is a renowned speaker and passionate about integrating the continent to increase inter-Africa trade. Thank you so much, Misela.
Thanks, Harry. Just to boost my own ego, I recently won an award in leadership, excellence in leadership from the transport evolution. And I think that the one that marks the most important one, an award, is from the International Rail Journal, where I am one of 16 winners of women in rail. So that is internationally throughout the world. And it shows that in my famous saying that don't ask for permission, just do what you need to do. In any case, good morning to still morning is good morning to everyone. Harry asked if I was going to prepare a presentation. I said yes. And something happened at the office yesterday, and electricity was not available. I suppose it's our bid as South Africa to reduce the green gas houses gases. So we share a little bit of what we have to make sure that we comply with the vision of controlling the overheating earth that we are living in, and the change in the world, basically. When I looked at the topic, it resonated very much with me. But I also remembered that what is gender. What do we understand of what gender is? And for gender diversity, gender in itself is people of different genders, and it is mostly refers to equitable ratio of men and women, but also most importantly, including people of non-binary genders. And I think that when we talk about inclusiveness and women, and we have a tendency to neglect the other human beings that do not necessarily identify as men and women. And I think going forward is important to realize this. And if I did not say this, I will be in trouble with my daughter, because she is an activist in that department. But I also looked at we as women and non-binary people, is that we tend to lose ourselves in wanting to be accepted, in wanting to belong, in wanting to be part of the team. But what makes us stand out is our uniqueness. It's what makes Misela tick. It's what makes the next person to be very good at what they do, that people notice that you are not like other people, but you are different. And you are different is because you know who you are. You do not need for somebody to give you a right to be at a certain place, but we have to take up those spaces. And for inclusiveness, also from the gender perspective, when we talk about inclusiveness, it is mostly commonly being used that we must give women opportunities. And so already that in itself says that somebody owns the permission. So we need to go and beg for a place in society, and of which for me it has always been a bit difficult. And I live with the motto of I kick down doors. If there's no chair at the table for me, I will bring my camping chair. But is to ensure that our involvement in any industry, in the transport industry, is not limited by other people, but it's also not limited by ourselves, that we think less of ourselves. And I have a quote from one of the warriors, Japanese warriors, and it says, "Never accept an inferior position to anyone. It is the strongest spirit that wins, not the most expensive sword." And for me, it resonates with me that as I walk in the room, I take my space. I do not see myself as inferior. I see myself as walking in and representing a certain sector of the population that is considered not fit enough to hold certain position. In some instances, well, I've been fortunate that I don't have a CV. I work very hard that my next gig, it's a conversation and that I would have the next person that I'm going to do business with, and then the next day we start working. So I have already defined my terms of engagement, and I think we need to make sure that we define the terms of engagement as the marginalized, that you don't go in being an inferior, but you go in there toe to toe and see yourself as an equal, so that you are seen as an equal. And I host interns, and one of the rules that we have at ARIA is that we all have hands, including Harry when he comes to visit to the office. No one is going to make Harry coffee, because in most instances it's women that we are a women-based type of organization, and we believe that once I get to a point where I make people tea, because our femininity has a tendency to take over, but to remember each and every time that I am not here to make anyone tea and coffee, because that in itself, it reduces who you are in the room. So never, ever make anyone tea. When anyone walks into our office, they have hands, they don't have ribbons, and that's how you stamp in that inclusiveness, so that you dictate the terms of what that inclusiveness is going to will mean for you, for other women, and for other women that will come after us. And but I also looked at what are the traits of inclusiveness, and borrowing from a study from Harvard, it talks about visible commitment. It must be intentional. It must be articulated properly. It must not just be English because we're ticking boxes. We must hold people accountable. I remember one of the PRASA reports to government. They had set a target of 10% of businesses that were the target that they wanted to reach for doing business with women. Think about 90% and the gender diversity that we have. We have people that think that 10% that we deserve 10%. And even with that 10%, they could not reach that 10% because the gender diversity doing business with women, it was never intentional. So we need to have intentional inclusiveness and make sure that we hold those in power accountable. And diversity and inclusion of personal a priority. The second one is that I found that it's important for me. It's humility. That I don't walk into a room as and borrowing from I'm not sure what happened there.
The signal dropped, Ms. Ella, so it's just about 30 seconds we lost you.
So borrowing from Niccolo Machiavelli, it is that titles do not honor men, but it is men that honors titles. But the one thing that I know is that I walk in there as a woman, a person that identifies as a woman, a Black woman, and my participation at any platform, I have a responsibility to other genders, to Black women in particular, that we don't get to a point where they say, look, we try to empower them and this is, they're giving us this mediocre a performance. We need to work hard, twice as hard or 3 times as hard in order to be accepted. But that is the price that we're going to pay in order to get what we want as different genders. The third one is that we must be aware of our bias. You know, in showing awareness to a personal blind spots, and as well as flaws in the system, and work hard to ensure that we mitigate that. And the personal blind spots, if I can give a silly example. There are certain people in an office, when they bring in food, they would expect that everybody takes their food. But when everybody else brings the food, the very same person that has an expectation for others to take their food, there's a certain bias that food coming from Misela may not necessarily be clean, may not necessarily be this, even if it's the same type of food that we bought from Woolworths, and it's not been opened and everything else. So that is bias that I think that in most instances we think that it's nothing, but actually it means a lot. Is it a woman? Is it coming from a Black person? So those issues are quite sensitive in being inclusive. Be intentional. The fourth one being the curiosity about others. You know, I when I encounter particularly non-binary genders, I don't know what that means, but I engage the people that identify themselves as not men and women, and try to find a respectful way of being informed by the person, not necessarily reading in a book, but by a person about their feelings, about how they feel inclusiveness should look like, not necessarily from the women perspective, but from non-binary people as well. And to listen without a judgment. We all have maybe religions that we belong to that does not necessarily promote or recognize non-binary people as equal amongst others. As far as I'm concerned, God made us in his image, and his image is perfect, and the non-binary people are perfect as well. The cultural intelligence is important, being attentive to other cultures and adapt as required. And I see colleagues in particularly around Heritage Day, that we have learned to embrace our heritage and accept Harry that wears a Springbok jersey on Heritage Day. Springbok jersey is not heritage, Harry. We need to get you something more African that defines you as an African. Then we have effective collaboration. I mean, we need to empower each other, pay attention to diversity of thinking, and the psychological safety, and focus on a team cohesion. Now, the teamwork, the team, the company, because at the end of the day, it's one identity, it's one area, it's one Standard Bank, it's one FNB. The brand of the organization depends on the individuals within that organization and how they are recognized as firstly as human beings, but also not neglecting who they are, who they define themselves as human beings. And going back to where I started my career, Project Galvanizers, there was other gigs before, but Project Galvanizers, it's I was the only female in the factory, responsible for 18 Black men, and I had to find ways to win them over, to talk their language, to an extent that one day I was asked a question, almost as if a question, and it was posed to me as if I was a man. But that means that they had started looking at me as one of their own, but I had to discipline them very quickly to say that you can't ask that question. I'm not in a position to answer that question. So it goes back to not losing ourselves. And I'm sure there are a lot of women here that know how I feel about wearing black. I'm wearing black today because I couldn't find anything else to wear that fit. We come into these industries that are still male dominated, and we were black that they were, we were blue that they were, we were grays that they were. We don't own ourselves. We don't go into a room saying that I am not you, I am Misela, or I am a Ntabiseng. That in itself starts having a conversation, even if it's a tacit conversation, about the inclusivity of different people in organizations, in the industry. I wear colors, and I wear colors intentionally saying that I am not a male, I am a woman. At least I identify as a woman. And the tone is set by us, is set by us, the marginalized, is set by us, those that are new to the industry, because somebody is allowing us to come to the industry. I would encourage that we kick down those doors, and we if there's no seat at the table, you make sure that you have your camp chair and your handbag with you. That is protecting our identity still within the male dominated world. Is to be us, is to be different, is to be it's not to be like men, but if you choose to be like men, it's okay. But we need to be acutely aware that we are who we are. We are beautiful, bright, colorful beings, and we should exercise that. From the supply chain point of view, the supply chain, there is procurement. Women are vulnerable. I am currently aware of a Black woman, an engineer, intelligent, that was recruited to target a certain company and work with that company because it will be easier to get the attention of the buyers and whoever is in the system in order for them to make a sale. And in this particular instance, the company did not win a tender. And this woman has been accused of taking bribes from competitors. She has been put through two what do you call the test? They plug you in and stuff, but two of them, because they're giving a chance to to come out clean, and that for me, it's not only because if it was a male person, she would not have had to go through that experience. And it's time that as women, pink, yellow, brown, whatever, in this industry, we stand up together. And if we hear of such incidences, we show up at those companies and show support of one of our own. For me, legally, I cannot say which company this is, but I think that men in this industry still in positions that do not embrace gender diversity, that do not embrace the inclusiveness, that do not embrace that I come to the table with gifts, with information, with I'm educated, I'm an engineer, I'm capable, and mostly capable more than many on the table. We need to change the leaderships of these companies, because if we don't change, we will suffer the same fate that the woman I'm referring to.
Now, the thing seems that we lost Marcella's signal there. I'm quite convinced she will join us again soon. Marcella, there you are. We lost you.
Harry, yeah, Harry, I think maybe you have a problem with gender diversity, and that's why you keep on cutting. No, our network is not the best.
Yeah, Marcella, we're running out of time a little bit. Will you conclude, please?
Yeah, but you know my problem is to wrap it up, as for me as one of those that are vulnerable in society, I am putting up my hand out there that any women that is mistreated in their organizations, I will show up when they are being victimized like that. I will show up and sit in the reception of that company so that these companies, these leaders that do not embrace inclusiveness and treating other human beings fairly know that we know about them. Any company that does that, it does not deserve to have an individual as intelligent as the person that I'm referring to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcella. Really appreciate sharing all your knowledge with us and your experience. It's so important to understand that one shouldn't lose yourself, and you can belong somewhere. And it's important to, you colorful people, we're all colorful people, and we have certain gifts, and we need to change whatever's happening in our worlds. That's so important. And is sharing also that it is important to be different, but we're aware of who we are, and we appreciate that. So I don't know, Louise, if you want to say a few words as usual. Marcella, from my side, thank you so much. Please stay online. We would love to include you in the questions and answers. But Louise, over to you.
No, thank you, Harry. And every time I listen to Marcella and all the other wonderful ladies on this call, I get inspired. And I think that is possibly the biggest power we've got collectively between ourselves, because if we hold hands together, we can only get stronger and get by standing together. I love Marcella's quote around bringing your own chair. So if you see me traveling with a little fold-up chair, you know that I'm going to go and sit somewhere where I shouldn't be. But I think I want to touch on something that seems to have come through all the speakers, and Yuliswa, you raised it, this unconscious bias, because I think that's probably one of our most difficult things to deal with, and it's not just around women. Marcella, you touched on, unfortunately, Nikki is not with us anymore, but she explained to me one day the different classifications of gender that now exist. I don't know if everybody know that there's about 24 classifications of gender now. And that combined with, because Nikki and them had the challenge of ensuring that their training material and the way they trained is actually sensitive to this 26 gender definitions. And I think that's something that is a challenge, going to be a challenge for all of us. This unconscious bias that even we ourselves do sometimes, but you don't really know you're doing that. Those are the things. And I think then a very important point, Marcella, is cultural differences, because that also plays a big role. And I think we need to consciously begin to work towards that as well. You know, we all come from different cultures, and we need to understand that there might be things in our culture that we don't even realize is impacting other things. So I think this discussion is an important starting point, and I hope that through our engagement, we've not only inspired a lot of people, but shown them the power and the people that we've got within South Africa that can actually make a difference. So Harry, over to you for some questions and answers. And I think, Marcella, you were saying, and Nikki and Ray were saying, we all suffer from the same thing. We talk too much, but this is such an important topic. So it's good to have the conversation and to keep it flowing and everything. So Harry, over to you. And Marcella, sorry, it is the World Cup, so I'm going to ask, we're all going to have to wear Springbok jerseys. They're nice green, okay? And especially for you today, I did the pink. So over to you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Louise. Yeah, we call on our presenters, our panelists, to unmute and to switch on the videos. There we have them in a panel scenario. Yeah, Niku unfortunately can't be with us at the moment. Ladies and gents, there's our panel. And so it's now open for questions and answers. And so the way we're going to do it, you're welcome to either raise your hand using the raise hand function on Zoom, or you can unmute yourself, and then I can see you've unmuted yourself, and then I'll recognize you and you can ask your question. So let's see. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to ask for closing remarks from our panelists. So let's wait and see if we get questions. If you have a question and been recognized, then you can just say who you are, from what company, and then you can ask a question to the panel or a certain member of the panel. I think all the questions in the chat room has been addressed, so we don't need to look there. Thank you for the panelists. Let me just see. Doesn't seem to be people have questions for our panelists. I think they're all stunned. But you see, I think that's with me, and it actually came up with me now a lot during this conversation, is that issue of decision making which is on a different level than the impact is. And I think that's one of the big problems we have in South Africa, well, internationally, globally, is that decision-making on a wrong level. How are we going to address this? Maybe some of you can comment on that. How are we going to address that?
I think, Harry, maybe if I go first, and it will be very good to get Yuliswa's inputs on this, because she's in a large governmental organization with lots of layers, and possibly Ray as well. I think the important thing that we need to look at is to create this pipe of young, talented people that can move up into the organizations, and that we ensure that that pipe is, or the stream is kept full. I think it's one of the big things. If you look at the research, the amount of very well qualified people that are lost when they get to middle management level and not go further is quite substantial. And if you don't ensure that you've got a pipeline that are full, you tend to get this, that the decision makers really don't, the change is not in the decision-making process, and the representation is not there. So that's something that I think each of us within our sphere can influence and ensure that we really focus on that. And it will be good, Yuliswa, you've now been at Uber and at Transnet, which is probably two very different organizations. It will be good to hear from both you and Ray, your perspective on how that can be changed. Harry, I hope that assists and open the floor. And Marcella, welcome back.
Thank you, Louise.
I'll take a stab at it if you like, Harry.
Thank you.
So Louise, if I look at our particular circumstances within the customs fraternity, as you are aware, much of what we have as policy.
Yes, thank you so much, Louise. And I just want to say well done to the speakers as well.
I'm a little confused. I'm a blonde, you mustn't do this to me.
Yeah, no, sorry. I think it's just a bad signal at Yulisa's side. Yulisa, you're welcome to switch off your camera, then we can maybe better hear you. I think maybe load shedding kicked in certain areas, and that's why we're having that challenge here. Yulisa, can you hear us?
The truth is my battery is running low. Do you want to go for it, Ray? I'll go after you.
No, go ahead, Yulisa. You have the low battery. Go for it.
Ray, you can go for it. I'll go after you.
Okay, thank you.
I can hear you. I don't understand why you can't hear me.
Can you hear
me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. I was looking at Ray's face and it was saying, no, we can't. Look, Harry, let me go there. I just want to say thank you to the audience for their patience and the relevant speakers, right? Look, it boils down to two things for me. I mean, there's a lot of transformation. Well, there's a transformation. No, can you guys, the faces are saying something totally different. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're confusing me, Harry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'll go for it. Thank you so much. Okay, Harry, stop saying yes, yes. You're confusing me. I'll speak. Okay. Look, for me, it's two things. We've got the policies, we've got the transformation policies, but what worries me is that the president just set up a committee to monitor transformation. It then tells you that we are not able to self-manage when it comes to transformation. Somebody always has to be an arbiter was on the necks of the corporates, just to ensure that a simple thing like inclusivity and diversity is implemented. That's number one. It then says that maybe we're not punitive enough when we deal with companies that are not really doing justice to gender diversity. That's number one. Number two, for me, is extending the pool of, if you look at average, people stay for 20 years. And that's it's a very complex organization. It's such a privilege for those who've been, I wish I had joined 20 years earlier, that they've had an opportunity to go through each and every operating division. They know every piece of the puzzle. Therefore, I suppose what needs to happen is that in organizations as big as ours, therein lies an opportunity to have the skills development from an early age up to a point where we see these guys becoming executives in those particular organizations. It's happened at Transnet. Most of the guys that precede us have been there for quite a while. They've been through each and every one of those operating divisions. I suppose it goes to, and just to answer your question, Harry, directly, it goes to the maturity of the organization and the ability to understand that, or to foster a culture rather, that enables people to lead in whatever position they are. There is this mistaken belief that for you to be a leader, you must be at an executive level. I'm a firm believer that you lead in whichever position you are holding at that particular time, because every single piece of that piece since we started until now.
Thank you, Lisa. Ray, maybe you can also comment.
Thank you, Harry. And so, Louise, to your point, as many of you are aware, what we do in customs is driven by international instruments. So for us to make a difference, whilst certainly in the SARS environment, gender diversity is reflected in all levels of leadership and within all levels of our workforce. So whilst we can influence our own internal policies so that they become more gender inclusive, I would suggest that for me, our greatest challenge is to influence international instruments. And in influencing, we're actually influencing a history that in many instances, for example, the World Customs Organization, it came into being after Second World War. So that's the legacy that we've inherited. So for me, I think that whilst certainly within our own environments, we can do a lot of work to ensure that our policies and our procedures are as gender inclusive as possible and talk to the different needs of different segments. I think that many of us also from a trade perspective need to ensure that our influence is felt on the international arena. Now, it's interesting, I know at the Policy Commission, the WCO Policy Commission next week, one of the issues being discussed is gender diversity, and it's been led by the private sector. And I think that's where people who are online with us who represent the private sector should be making their voices heard, whilst we as those representing customs administrations and other government agencies that are involved in those discussions should equally be ensuring that we bring that together. And hopefully then we would be able to influence some of the documents but by the way, some of those international instruments are older than I am. Now, I did warn you I was 1,000 years old, but you know, I'm 57 years old. So I'm in the business applying an instrument, a very good instrument, don't get me wrong, but you know, its thinking was in before I was born, when I don't know that gender inclusivity was something that people consumed themselves with. And so for me, I think that's where we need to start. Whilst we're able to match that, it's almost like two glaciers about to collide, what we do at a national basis, but more importantly, how we influence at an international basis. And I do believe that the AFCFTA is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us in Africa to influence what happens in the trade environment for, in particular, women and youth in trade. Thank you.
Thank you, wise words there. Thank you so much. Yeah, ladies and gents, we're running out of time. So I think what we're going to do now is let's get closing remarks from our panelists. We can start with, hopefully, Lisa can still talk to us. We just lost Marcella, so the signal is a problem here. So Yelisa, then we take Ray, maybe Marcella is back again. And then I'm going to ask Louise to close the session for us. And from the Transport Forum side, Louise and Global Trade Solution, thank you so much for hosting us and for all the panelists for your valued contributions. Really appreciate it. So Yelisa, let's hear. Can you still hear us? Closing comments from your side?
Thank you, Harry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you so much. I mean, I've got just 2-3 closing remarks. I think we really need to think about and I'm not saying people don't have points of references. I acknowledge and I appreciate that. We really need to think hard about the real definition of unconscious biasness. I might still pose the question, is it really unconscious? Or we are moving from the basis of it's an easy way out of explaining why we behave in the manner that we behave, and we make the choices that we carry on making, which marginalize certain groups within our society. That's number one. Number two, I think we really need to think hard about, there's enabling policies, I agree to that, but there's also enabling infrastructure. I mean, in my early experience as a trainee engineer, one of the reasons I decided not to do road construction or to be on site was because the environment was just not conducive. There were no public toilets. It was just not working for me. And I was surrounded by men who could easily go around the corner and do whatever they needed to do. And I'm making a simple example out of a very big thing. There was a lady that spoke about the safety across the border, as well as pit stops. Enabling infrastructure is equally important as policy. The third issue that I wanted to make, and I want us to think about, is that we often refer to small companies, and they are small, medium enterprises, but their contribution to our GDP is far from small. So maybe by definition, we call them that, but please don't forget their contribution to our GDP, far from small. Lastly, but not least, I like the idea of bringing your own chair to a table where you're not invited, but I sometimes prefer to create my own table and let them come and join me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. That's wise words. Thank you so much. Let's try Marcella. Marcella, can you do closing remarks?
Harry, I think we've lost her.
Yeah, she's
I'm here.
Wonderful.
Let me do quickly before I get cut again. I want to close a very, very small quote. For us as human, to exist is to change. To change is to mature. To mature is to go on creating oneself endlessly. And this talks to our need of inclusiveness, gender diversity, and to continuously educate ourselves on our biases or have an intent as even as an individual to know the other, the person that sits next to you at work on a personal level, and that goes both sides. I still don't like food sisters, but please don't offer me food sisters. And yeah, that's all from my side, Terry. Thank you very much for this, and I really appreciate the people that have stayed on to listen to us going on and on and on about the things that are important to us. Thank you.
And you are important to us, so let's continue the narrative. Thank you, Marcel. I really appreciate it. Ray, some closing remarks from your side.
Thank you, Harry. So certainly, I closed with a quote about defining our own futures. And I believe that we have the opportunity to do that for women in trade. And I believe that the Authorized Economic Operator Program is the vehicle that we can use to build a better future for women in trade. And hopefully be able to take them from what is a small business, classified by SARS as a small business, to something that in the very near future is actually a large business. And we're committed to helping those particular companies grow to that level. And we have some great examples of women exporters who have flourished despite all the challenges. And I believe that we should be reaching out to those women as well and finding out from them, how can they assist the next generation of women importers and exporters to be able to reach international markets. I believe we have a product in South Africa that is beautiful. We should be celebrating it, and the rest of the world deserves to see what it is that we have to offer. And then perhaps just to also add, I was very lucky. We were all very privileged to have a colleague from SARS join us today, and she heads up our gender and equity division in SARS, and she and I were chatting on WhatsApp behind the scenes, and she proposed that perhaps we really should have a trade indaba. Maybe that's something we should be considering. And in that trade indaba, not only will we discuss then clearly what are the concerns of large business, etc., but perhaps we have a specific focus on gender issues within this environment. So that would be an interesting proposal that perhaps we can take up. Knowing Louise, before I can shut down Zoom, she'll be contacting me. But, so not just specifically for gender, but certainly with the gender flair in it, so that we can also flat and highlight to all of the other actors in the trade supply chain the particular issues and challenges that women in trade do, in fact, deal with every single day of their lives. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Ray. Very good suggestion, and thank you for sharing with us. Let me hand over to Louise, our host, to close the session for us. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Harry, and to all the remarkable speakers that has participated today and all the participants as well. I think the most important thing is that we started the conversation, and Ray and Mandisa, I fully agree with you. Trade indaba could be a fantastic forum. We were fortunate yesterday to attend a session hosted by the Cape Chamber, where we had 350 small medium enterprises that was deemed to be export ready. And that is the target audiences that we should start bringing into these conversations. And most of them were women, Ray. So I think from that point of view, starting this conversation and keeping it going is really what it's all about. Because by doing this, we're going to start, I love the way connect the dots. And once the dots are connected, you create the wave, because then things start happening all on their own. So I really want to thank everybody for their time. A special word of thanks to Harry, that always hosts us so wonderfully and ensure that we have got these platforms. So Harry, we do appreciate it. I know often we don't say thank you, but a big thank you from our side, and thank you to the audience. Keep the conversation going, and we look forward to your